Welcome to Under the Microscope. I'm your host, Jenny Germano. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about building a team in a regulated cannabis market. A little bit about my background. I got my start in the cannabis industry back in 2009 in Denver, Colorado, working in vertically integrated cannabis operations. In 2015, I founded my company, ICS Consulting, and I have been consulting nationally for the last 10 years. My goal is to help operators enter the new emerging marketplace and navigating the regulatory landscape and challenges. Thank you for tuning into my podcast today. I appreciate everyone who's been listening as I build this podcast. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also give me a follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Any brand new operators that are tuning in, I do have a form on my YouTube channel, Under the Microscope with Jenny. I am posting that link in all the comments for every episode, as well on the main profile of my YouTube channel. There is a Google form for you to fill out and submit questions or topics that you would be interested in hearing about relating to starting up your cannabis business in an emerging market. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's dive into this topic, building a team in the regulated cannabis industry. This is a really interesting topic because I came from working on the ground floor in these cannabis operations in the early days from 2009 to 2014. I think now where we are in 2025 and we're in a better place, a lot of professionals from other industries have now come over into the cannabis industry. I believe we're getting a lot more quality people involved in the industry. So I decided to do some research for myself, and I actually found a stat that I wanted to share with you. And I'm just going to go ahead and read the statistic that I found. So according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, approximately 20% of new businesses fail during the first 2 years of being open, 45% during the first 5 years, and 65% during the first 10 years. So only 25% of new businesses make it to 15 years or more. So if you're looking to run your business for 15 years or more, you have a 25% chance of being successful. And this really brings me to my next point that I want to talk about. Why do businesses fail in the cannabis industry? I think it's really important to talk about the reality of running a regulated business in the cannabis industry and the challenges that operators are faced with. Yes, there are people that are successful, and there are people who are not successful and they're failing, or there are people who have failed and they decided to try it again and now they're successful. There's a lot of different dynamics that are going on in the cannabis industry right now. And even larger companies, they're struggling too. And there are a lot of challenges in the cannabis industry. And so I think it's really important to talk about this part first before I dive into building a team. So just to go back to what I brought up earlier, the question I asked, which is why do businesses fail in the cannabis industry? And here are a couple, this is not all the reasons, but here are a couple reasons that I came up with. Ineffective business planning. The business plan that you submit with your license application, it doesn't always translate into reality. Submitting a business plan to win a license or to get investors doesn't necessarily mean that the business plan is connected to 100% reality of actually getting the business open. The market changes weekly, monthly, and when you submit that business plan a year ago or won that application a year ago, by the time you get operational through the build out and all the challenges and ups and downs and potentially delays, will that business plan even be correct for where you're at when you're getting ready to open? I think some of the challenges can be trying to launch a business, getting ready to open for the market. I think some operators don't really update that business plan or try to adjust to where the market is when they're about to open. And that can cause issues as well. And it's not just one of these issues that will cause you to fail. It's the accumulation, the pile on, the buildup over time of a lot of issues not being taken care of, or the overwhelm, and sometimes putting our heads in the sand and not really dealing with issues can really sink a business. The next one is cash flow and insufficient capital. Everybody knows this is an issue in the cannabis industry. Banking is an issue. Some businesses are dealing with cash only, no credit, no using credit cards. People are using ATM machines or debit card machines. I know a lot of startups that run out of money in the middle of their build out. And because things come up and it ends up costing more money, or the build out's taking longer, or 6 months to a year down the road, things are becoming more expensive. There are a lot of different scenarios that can come up when you're trying to get your business off the ground and opening. Also, lack of experience in the market. I think this can really affect a business. If you are completely green and have never operated in this market before, even if you are coming from another industry and you have professional experience of running a business, it doesn't always translate over to cannabis. And there's always going to be things that you don't know, and what you don't know, you're not going to be able to catch. So when I talk later about building a team, making sure that you have somebody who's vetted and experienced in the cannabis industry that can be on the team, that has that knowledge, even in ownership that has that knowledge, because that is going to be a challenge for people coming into these new markets, is not having any experience at all. I would say another one would be no leadership. I find this actually pretty common that there are companies that are lacking leadership. And it's a hurry up, let's just get it open. I don't care. I'm not going to think about leadership. Or I submitted my application. We're done. Now I just got to get open. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not thinking about those things. I'm just thinking about my marketing or just trying to pass my inspection. I'm not thinking about leadership or anything like that. So it's really important to make sure you include how you're going to be handling leadership, who's going to be the leader, where it's coming from, and what true leadership really is. Another reason why businesses fail in the cannabis industry is poor management of the day-to-day operations. I see this all the time, where we put managers in management positions where they shouldn't be a manager, or we tap somebody, you're going to be the leader, you're going to be the person communicating with everybody on the ground, everyone in the trenches, the day-to-day employees, but it's actually a weakness. They're not very good at it. So that can really tank an operation, is just year after year of really bad management of the day-to-day operations. The day-to-day operations is the honey of the business. All these other things are rotating around and supporting it, but that's really the core of the business, is making sure that the employees and the day-to-day operations, that everything is being managed properly, from seed to sale, from employee to consumer, that all those areas are being addressed appropriately. This one I see a lot happen in the cannabis industry, which is failing to adapt to change. This is a very important skill to have in the cannabis industry. Every owner needs to have the skill of adapting to change. And if the owner does not have that skill, and that's totally fine, you need to have somebody on the team or somebody at the executive level in ownership that has the ability to adapt to change. Why? The cannabis industry is nothing but nonstop changes all the time. It changes every day, every week, every month. It's nonstop. That's just the truth. Rules and regulations change. packaging and labeling changes. Somebody could have an adverse event, which would prompt the regulatory body to send recalls. There's going to be changes to SOPs. It's nonstop changes. And just when you get comfortable a year in, 2 years in to your rules and regulations, that regulating body says, okay, we get this now. We've been at this a year. We've been at this 2 years. Now we're going to go through the entire rule set and we're going to regulate even more because we realized we were missing this or this is causing issues and we need to remove this or add this. And then you're going to start going through the changes where it's going to be repealing and adding in new rules and regulations, and more regulations are going to come. And that's just the nature of working in the regulated industry, especially when you're in a new emerging market and that state is trying to figure it out, which happens in every state: Colorado, Michigan, Nevada, California. All these states are having to adapt, change. And if you're an operator, you have to adapt and you have to change and you have to adapt and you have to change. It's the natural process of running a regulated business in the cannabis industry. Another one is cutting corners with compliance and not adhering to the rules and regulations. I would say in most states, people do everything they can. They pass their inspection, but let's just say half do a good job and they maintain the compliance and they keep it up. I would say the other half starts getting a little lackadaisical, gets comfortable, or they wait for the regulators to come in and tell them what's wrong and they don't really engage with compliance. So I see a lot of this happening where people start to cut corners, they start getting comfortable or they start getting complacent. I really start to see it in, I would say, year 3 of the market. I think the first 2 years, everyone is like on their tippy toes, walking on eggshells, nervous. There's a lot more fear built up around the regulators coming in. I think when we start getting into year 3 and longer, people tend to get more comfortable. I also think, too, that first 2 years, the regulatory agencies are weeding through, I would say, the not so good players. People, they're just failing right out of the gate. They're cutting corners. For example, I saw violations coming out in New Mexico within the first 2 years of people getting operational. And now it's starting to become this more old machine. But I look at Michigan right now, they're definitely more than 3 years in, and their regulatory body has just become stronger and stronger. They have been pushing out more and more regulations and seeing consistently every month, Michigan is pushing out violations right now. And we can save the whole topic of violations for another podcast in the future. I'm just trying to give examples. Even in these more mature markets, I'm actually seeing more violations come out, which tells me that people are beginning to get comfortable. 5 years in, 10 years in, 8 years in, I'm seeing more violations because the regulatory agencies are adapting, where they're saying, hey, we're going to do unannounced visits now. We're not going to schedule them. We're not going to tell you when we're coming. And it's not going to be educational anymore. We're actually going to give you a fine and you're going to have to pay money. And there could be administrative hearing and whatnot. So it's really important to not cut this corner. I actually don't cut any corner, but compliance is something that should definitely not be an area where you try to cut a corner to save money. Also, another one is ineffective marketing and branding of the business. I'm not a marketing specialist, but I've been at this 16 years. I've seen a lot of people brand and not brand, and I think it's really important to think about your marketing strategy and how you're going to brand your business and who you're marketing to, connecting to that customer. Who's your customer base? There are some operators out there that they know exactly who their customer base. Maybe they just, hey, we're just interested in the 21 to 40-year-olds. We're not really interested in having brands or products for people over the age of 50. Maybe you're a company that you want to be a brand for everyone. You're going to have products from 21-year-olds all the way up to someone who's 100, right? and you're going to try to make sure you have a little bit something for everyone. Maybe it's stronger THC products, like with higher percentages, or maybe it's going to be a lot of the ratio products, which I call the 1-to-1s, like the 2.5 milligrams that have the CBD and the CBNs mixed in with some of the THCA. It really depends on what you're doing. So that's the dispensary. But also, if you're a manufacturer, how are you branding your gummies? How are you branding your flower? Actually, what's really fascinating, state to state, I would say all the manufacturing companies that, let's say, make a gummy or a drink or an edible or some type of consumable, they brand really, they actually do a good job at branding. But the flower is a mixed bag. It's really interesting. In Colorado, just now I'm starting to see where people are pre-packaging and branding, but it's nowhere close to like Michigan out of the gate. Michigan and I would say Missouri out of the gate, they crushed it when it came to cultivators really taking how they're branding their flower seriously. That didn't happen in Colorado. In Colorado, it was like, here's your turkey bag, bulk flower, and we're going to just put it in these boring little white pop tops at the dispensary, and no one's going to brand. I'm always encouraging dispensaries, if you're going to buy bulk flower and not do pre-pack, brand the container. Don't just put it in a plain pop top. Brand. You spent all this money branding your name, your dispensary, you're buying bulk flower, if that's allowed in your state. Every state is different, right? Some states it's all prepackaged, but if you're in a state where you're allowed to do pre-pack and bulk flower, if you're going to be doing deli style or packaging in the back room of your dispensary, brand your container. Please brand your container. I'm telling you, it's worth the money. It's worth getting the label. Just don't leave it plain and have a little POS label and a barcode on it. It's really important to invest in branding. And making a label for your pop top doesn't really cost a lot of money. I think naturally manufacturers already know they have to brand, but dispensaries sometimes leave a little bit on the table when it comes to branding. Yes, they're marketing their dispensary, they have a Facebook page or an Instagram, and maybe they have brand ambassadors, but what are you doing around flower? And also white labeling. You could white label products for your dispensary and get your dispensary brand on those white label products. Lots of opportunity to do branding and marketing. So I think there can be some ineffective marketing and branding and some missed opportunities in the industry, and this is not going to cause you to fail your business as one piece, but it's like I said, it's the accumulation of a lot of other things. It all just starts to add up, but not reaching your customer, not connecting to your customer, not getting customer feedback, not asking them what they think. All that data is really important, whether you're a grow or you're a manufacturer or a dispensary. Just because you're not customer facing doesn't mean you shouldn't think about branding and marketing and what your customers think. That's what's important, like doing pop-ups and working with the dispensary and collaborating. Hey, can I do a pop-up in your dispensary this weekend? Get a nice branded little table or whatnot and some non-marijuana swag that you can hand out, like lighters or t-shirts or hats, and then talk to all the people coming in. Ask them, have you tried my product? What do you think? What do you like? What don't you like? And get feedback. That's really important information. That's going to lead you down this road to be successful in the cannabis industry. If you just opened, we're just going to do these things and we're not going to continue to be innovative and we're not going to adapt and we're not going to get feedback because I think the brand I created is amazing and I don't really need anyone's feedback, you really could be setting yourself up to fail in the cannabis industry. I think the last one, which is going to tie into what I want to talk about today, which is about not hiring the right talent. This can happen a lot. It just really comes down to not even hiring the right talent, but are you putting the people that you're hiring in the right position? They could be an amazing person on paper, but are you actually utilizing their skill set, what they're good at? It's important to make sure that you are getting people in the right positions. I find that people put managers in management positions that shouldn't be a manager. because they didn't have the proper training. And you really need to hire people to be a manager that have management training, that know how to move the team forward, meet the goals, communicate with the team, and then also run the day-to-day operations. All that's really important. The reason I want to talk about this today is because the cannabis industry is full of ups and downs, and that's never going to change. It's always going to be, I don't have a pen, I do have this highlighter, so I'll just use this for those that are watching me. The cannabis industry is going to be this up and down. I'm just basically drawing like a little mountain peaks that go up and down. That is going to be the cannabis industry. It's not just going to be this steady straight line where everything is peaches and cream. There are always going to be challenges. It's very much just like life, right? There's going to be curveballs. There's going to be challenges. There could be a rule change. You could get inventory that gets caught up and that's on an administrative hold. And then all that money that you paid for that product's just sitting there in your vault and you can't use it because maybe there's an investigation with somebody that you purchased product from. Maybe your point of sale crashes on 420. There could be a lot of different things. Maybe your business goes through a burglary. Maybe you have some disgruntled employees that try to cause harm to your business. Maybe somebody gets hurt and they call OSHA on you, and now OSHA's coming into your cannabis operation. These are just little things that I'm listing, but there are lots of different things that can come up. Losing funding, investors pulling out, the market changing. By the time you get open, the price per pound, let's just say when you applied for the application, you estimated that price per pound for the flower was going to be, let's just say, like $2,500 a pound. But by the time you get operational, maybe you're not the first one to get open, and now the market's saturated, and now that price per pound has dropped, and now you're going to get $1,000 per pound for top tier, and maybe you're getting $600 a pound for tier 2, and then obviously so on for low tier. We're talking $400 a pound. That's going to affect your business because you have the cost of the lights, the electricity, you have labor, the cost of watering. If you're not automated and you're hand watering, if you don't have full automation at your grow and someone's mixing all the chemicals, labor, once again, the cost of the rent for the building, the cost of the licenses, does it all add up to what the cost of what you're going to be selling your flower for wholesale? Or are you going to be in the red? So these are things to think about, especially on the cultivation side. I think cultivation is the most challenging when it comes to a mature market. I do know cultivators in Colorado that actually are being successful, and I'm seeing $1,600 a pound in our market, which I find pretty amazing considering that most people are selling their top tier around $800 to $900 for top shelf. And I think that company that's selling that per pound for $1,600 is obviously doing something because they're actually getting people to pay that. So their product must be really good. And I know there's companies where they sell out. There's like a wait list just to get their pre-pack. There's a brand in Colorado, can't keep their pre-packaged goods on the shelf. There's a waiting list of people that want to get their products because the consumer base they have built up love this product. I think there are ways to do it the right way. But I think it's important to talk about the reality of the ups and downs, the ebb and flow, and I think that's just natural part of doing business. So in the cannabis industry, there are the following license types. I always like to bring this up just in case somebody listening does not know. There is the cultivation facility. So this is the flower that I talked about. There's the dispensary. So this is where product is sold to the public. This is the only public-facing license operation that's out there where the general public comes in and purchases. There's manufacturing. This is where edibles are getting manufactured, or tinctures, or even sometimes pre-rolls. Depending on what state, pre-rolls can be made in the manufacturing side or the cultivation side. This is also concentrates, lotions, consumable foods, infused foods. Once again, this is not state specific, and every state is different. There's also transport or delivery, depending on what your state calls it. There's delivery, which is transport, which is business to business. So that would be licensed operator to licensed operator. So example, cultivation facility delivers to the dispensary, or the manufacturer delivers to the dispensary. Or there's a transport company that the manufacturer or cultivators contract out to do the deliveries for them. In Colorado, we have transporters. They deliver all across the state. If they're in the metropolitan area, some people do their own delivery, but for places that are 4 to 5 hours away, like up in the mountains or in northern Colorado, they use transport companies, or on the eastern plains. And then we have delivery, right? So depending on what your state allows, there's B to C. So this is business to customer. So the customer orders online from the dispensary, and then that delivery company delivers to the customer at their door, at their house. We also have testing labs. In every state, there are testing labs. Products are getting tested. Also, there is commercial licenses or micro license variations. Micro license is more of a smaller business, a very limited plant count. Sometimes it can be 500 plants, 300 plants, or Missouri, where I think they call it a wholesale license. The combination of the grow license and the manufacturer license and the dispensary is separate. In some states, you can only do business micro to micro, and then commercial licenses do business with other commercial licenses. It just depends on what licensing that your state is creating. And also, as markets mature, they sometimes introduce new license types into the market. In the beginning, Colorado, we did not have the micro business licenses or the social equity licenses. We just had commercial licenses. And so they added that later on. Each state is different. Some states, they do it right out of the gate, like in Missouri. It was commercial licenses first, and then they came up with the micro business license, and they're slowly working through that right now. Each one of these operations, they require specific employees and specific roles. Here's just a few different roles that can be in the day-to-day operations. Obviously, we know the executive level. You might have the CEO, a CFO, the chief financial officer, a COO, which is chief operating officer, and so on. It's important to think about your day-to-day operational roles. A few examples are like a packager, a joint roller, or maybe they're not just sitting there hand rolling joints, but now there's all this equipment and machines to fill cones and whatnot. Maybe it's running the equipment techs, a lab technician. This could be somebody working in a lab that produces solventless concentrates, running the equipment, filling the vape cartridges, and running the machines. There's also bud tenders, which are the employees that serve the customers that come in the dispensaries. We have grow hands, trimmers, a cultivation manager. When we get into the testing facility, we have a lab manager. So there's all kinds of roles when it comes to a position in the cannabis industry. You should be spending just as much time as you did building the executive team, the ownership team. You should spend that same amount of time building your day-to-day operational team, if not more, because they are the gatekeepers of compliance. That joint roller, that person scanning the ID, that person making that sale, the person trimming the plant, there's compliance involved in every piece that every hand touches when it comes to a regulated business. Every one of those employees affect compliance. So it's really important to make sure that everyone is trained properly, they understand their roles, and that they understand that they're meeting the job requirement and they're fulfilling that job role. So ask yourself this question: how will you build the team that will support the rest of the team, the day-to-day? And how will each department in your business support the other department, and how they connect and how they work together? I wanted to come up with a good list of steps for building a successful team. One, having a mission. What is the mission of your company? Whether you're a cultivation facility, manufacturing, dispensary, or even a transporter, even a testing facility. What is the mission? What is the shared commitment in the business? We have rules and regulations, and we have following through with being engaged. It's very important to be engaged when running your cannabis operation because you are regulated. You are under a microscope. And believe it or not, you're being watched in every little thing that you're doing. And if they're not seeing it in that moment, they can come in and inspect your facility at any time. Everything's on camera. They can come in and go back 30, 40 days, depending on what the rule is in your state, and they can review camera footage. And in some states, they actually have 24-hour access, and they can log on to your cameras at any time, depending on what state that you're in. How does your mission involve the team? I understand that maybe a lot of people have a personal mission. Cannabis saved my life. I was sick, or my parents were sick, or it got me off prescription drugs. There's some people have a deep personal experience with cannabis, and that's why they go and start this business. But how does your mission involve the team? It's okay to have a mission that's personal and deeply rooted to yourself, but also, is there a way to have a mission that my staff can connect to, that the customer can connect to? What is the why? I always ask people, why are you doing this? What are your whys? It's very hard to be successful in the cannabis industry without a why. It's important for you to understand, why am I doing this? Why am I going to throw myself into this ocean of nonstop challenges where I'm going to have to adapt to all the changes all the time? Why am I doing that? What is my reason? And then I'm connected to that. Because you need to have some type of internal driving force for why you're doing this and why it's important to you and what it means. Another thing is, what are the guiding principles of the company? How will you ensure that there's engagement in the mission? That's coming across to the customers and the employees and your product. The packaging is nice. The design is nice. The quality, the company caring in the mission, and all those things are coming through. Obviously, it's a lot harder if you're the manufacturer or the grow because you're not customer facing. So you have to even put in even more effort. That's why I think it's important for cultivators and manufacturers to do pop-ups and work with those dispensaries that are carrying their products. Number 2, with building a successful team, goals and milestones. I love this. When I was an employee in the cannabis industry, I was a very goal-oriented person. I still am to this day, but I think it really helped me as an employee to set goals. And not only that, but to set goals for my employees to reach. It's important to feel like you're accomplishing something and that you're not just showing up every day and you're slinging weed. And I think it's really important to be engaged and to feel like you're going somewhere and there's improvement and you're growing and you're learning. And it's important to celebrate the wins with your team. So what is the team working towards? How are you communicating? Do they know? Are you communicating it to them? Are you talking about it in a meeting? Is it on a dry erase board somewhere? Is it on the community bulletin board? Do people even know about it? Did the team reach their goals? And if so, are you celebrating the wins? Step number 3 in building a successful team, roles and responsibilities. I know I talked a little bit about this earlier. What is everyone's function at the company? Who reports to who? What does the chain of responsibility look like? Who are the team leaders? When it comes to the dispensary, I like to call them shift leads. And those shift leads are providing leadership to the bud tenders underneath them. And that shift lead is supporting the assistant manager. And then the assistant manager is supporting the store manager, the general manager, or however that you have your org chart set up. But there needs to be shift leads, and that people have different roles interacting with the team as it goes up in position. And the same goes for the grow, the manufacturing facility. Who is on the ground floor pushing the team forward, talking with the team, making sure that if there are any issues or concerns that's coming from the team, that's being addressed. Who's responsible for making sure that's getting done? Who is communicating? Who's in charge of the communication? Where's the information coming from? And then, like I said, who are the team leaders? And not only that, for this step, once you figure out how you're going to do this, how you're going to organize it, get it typed up on paper, then you're going to have to communicate it to all the employees so they understand the process, and that you're not just doing it and then nobody understands what's going on. Number 4, in building a successful team in the regulated cannabis industry, ground rules. You have to establish ground rules. If you don't, everyone's going to walk all over everyone. There has to be boundaries. There needs to be bumpers set up, whatever you call it. I call it boundaries. What are the ground rules with communication from the top to the bottom? I'm telling you, a huge reason people fail in the cannabis industry is lack of communication. It builds up over year after year to all of a sudden when the owners have to leave, and then people start leaving the company, and then you start having high turnover. If you're not good at communication, hire a professional to come in and build out how everyone communicates in your business. Spend the money and invest, because communication is a silent killer in a business. This covers things like how meetings are run and how often, how the team is going to communicate with each other, how is the executive team going to communicate with the day-to-day operations and making sure that things are getting translated properly, then to, I guess I call them the honeybees or the busy bee workers, trimmers and bud tenders and packaging department. Is everything from the top being communicated exactly the way it needs to? If you have multiple owners, are they all coming in and saying something different and then basically throwing a grenade to the manager who just spent all this time training employees and telling them it was this way, and then somebody came in and said it's no, this way? I'm telling you, that is a silent killer in a cannabis business. You have to get organized around how you're going to communicate, and you need to have ground rules. Number 5, in building a successful team, decision making. How will decisions be made? Who's making the decisions? Will there be meetings around making decisions? Will certain decisions be under certain job titles or specific executive roles or management roles? For example, is there going to be a purchasing manager? Does that purchasing manager have free reign? Or is that purchasing manager going to have a weekly meeting with the CFO? Who's in charge of the budget? Who's in charge of spending? Are those people communicating? The person purchasing the product for the dispensary actually talking to the person who knows how much money the dispensary has? Are you going to have the money to pay the vendor? Who's communicating all that to the purchasing manager? Also, is there going to be data used to make decision in the business? And does that decision making, what roles does it affect? And if it does affect the manager, or if it does affect the COO, Is everybody involved in having a meeting? I believe the executive team should have at least a once a week meeting with the operations manager. And then I think the operations manager, they need to have a meeting every day before every shift starts with their team on the ground floor. Meaning, if I was running a store right now, I would have a 15-minute meeting with my bud tending staff before we open the doors. I would go over our specials today, or here's what goals we're trying to meet, or we're going to be having some pop-ups today. Be prepared. Or maybe we have a contest going on, something, or maybe we're sponsoring a yoga event at our business, or maybe we're handing out these special coupons, or we have this ad out. When it comes to the cultivation or manufacturing, maybe in the manufacturing side, there's something that's 86 or something that came up that's not available in the kitchen, or maybe in the middle of changing over to a new mold, or the packaging is being updated. It's really important information. The day-to-day operations people, they need to have communication and meetings. Number 6, in building a successful team, accountability. How are people going to be held accountable? I always say when it comes to auditing, who's auditing the auditor, right? It's the same thing. Who's holding who accountable from the top to the bottom? Is there shared accountability? Is there team accountability? Is there individual accountability? And then how does that get managed? If there are accountability issues, how is that getting communicated? Do you have an HR department? If you do not have an HR department and you're sourcing out payroll and HR to another company, and that company is not really coming in and meeting with your staff over HR issues, so how are you handling this internally? So these are all important things to think about. My final thought on this that I wanted to bring up is onboarding. A lot of times when we onboard for facility, for example, cultivation, you hire somebody that has cultivation experience and they come in, they get onboarded with your processes at your facility and they get trained. Or with the dispensary, they come in, they get trained, how to use the POS. Here's our opening and closing procedures. Here's how we do inventory control. I want to make sure that people communicate these areas that I talked about around building a team. And here's how we're going to communicate. Here's how people are going to be held accountable. It's more than just saying, here's an employee handbook. Please read this and email me the signature page. I feel like that's what people do. They just throw an employee handbook at these employees and that's it. There's no other engagement in the process of how the company is doing things. I think you really need to be invested. You really need to invest in every process with the team. It has to be more than here's an employee handbook. We're just going to start throwing you into selling product. Part of your onboarding process needs to be more than your seed to sale training, point of sale software training, or SOP training. What's the company's responsibility? Here's our processes. Here's how we work with the team. Here's how important we think the team is. Here's all the things that we expect out of the team, and have a conversation and just have a training around that and making sure that everyone's on the same page. But not only that, you as the operator, you have to uphold your side, meaning you can't just say, here are all the things that we expect you to do, and then you don't hold up your end. And then I'm telling you, over time, that creates disgruntled employees. You're going to become a revolving door. It's then going to bleed to the customers. The customers are going to be unhappy. And it's going to be this big vacuum that's going to be very hard to get out of. And you might as well invest the time to do it the right way out of the gate. And if you're good at building a team, take some of the things that I shared and make your own list and ad-lib off that, and take the things I said and write it down and write your own definition of what you think the ground rules should be, or accountability should be, or what it means to celebrate the wins. You don't have to take what I say word for word. My hope is more than anything is just to provide you context and a place to start. just to provide enough context to inspire you to create what you need to create for your business and to put yourself in it, to be involved and to think for yourself and to make sure that you're there every step of the way and involved in every process. I'm telling you, your employees, your team, they will notice. They will notice and they will want to work hard. If you work hard and your team sees you working hard, your team will work hard. And if they don't, they will stand out like a sore thumb and you will part ways and you will get somebody else. That's the great thing about having a hardworking team. If somebody's not working just as hard, they stand out and you're going to move on and you're going to go with somebody else who's willing to work just as hard as everyone else. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope this was helpful. I appreciate everyone listening. Like I said, I'm growing this podcast. This is very new for me. I'm learning and growing as I'm going through this. Even with the 10 years of speaking on a stage about cannabis compliance, this is completely different from what I'm used to. So I really do appreciate all my existing listeners and any new listeners that are coming on. You can find my podcast on my YouTube channel at Under the Microscope with Jenny. Also, you can listen to me on Apple and Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. You can also look me up Under the Microscope with Jenny podcast on LinkedIn as well. I come out with a new episode every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. I also have a great lineup of guests who are experts in their field, as well as having fireside chats with real cannabis operators